Hi, and welcome to my undergraduate research symposium submission. My name is Yasmin, and my ROP, or research project, centered around camera-based shape sensing and motion capturing of tendon-driven continuum robots under Professor Bergner Kars and PhD student Priyanka Rao under the Continuum Robotics Lab at UTM and the University of Toronto Robotics Institute. So for some context behind this project, it's centered around solving a big problem in the healthcare space, which is centered around surgeries, especially in neurosurgeries, where tumors can form in very unique spots that are hard to reach. And so you need something called a continuum robot that's developed here at UTM. And a continuum robot is sort of by definition an actuatable structure whose constitutive matter forms curves with continuous tangent vectors. So all of that is sort of fancy to say it kind of functions like a worm or an elephant's trunk, where we can get to very specific parts of the brain or any other organ and sort of just curve around and get to a tumor and, for instance, resect it. So for some more context of what currently exists on the market, you can use things like laser or mechanical probes, but those are very expensive and they're too big and they won't fit in small spaces. So the solution here under this lab was an external image-based sensing technique, where I implemented a calibration and computer vision algorithm for an existing multi-camera system. So you'll see those 3 cameras at the bottom there, so that a person or a surgeon really could capture the motion and sense the shape of where the robot is in 3D space, because that's very important. You need to know where the robot is as you're doing a surgery, for instance. So if you look at the experimental apparatus at the bottom left, you'll see I used 3 cameras and a tendon-driven continuum robot. And this robot has something called Aruco markers. And these are sort of detection markers. You can think of it like a QR code that when detected can tell you where this code or where this QR code is in 3D space, which is very important when we want to understand where the robot is. Because if you look at this apparatus, you'll see that the QR codes or Aruco markers are on the backbone of the robot. So if you sort of map all of them, you'll sort of know where the robot is in 3D space, which is very cool. And you could do that with artificial intelligence or a subset called computer vision. So that's what the goal of this project was. In terms of the methodology, if we get into the details, I used a camera calibration algorithm. So this sort of takes, you have 3 cameras, they take photos of 3 objects in space. In this context, it's sort of a checkerboard. That's a basic standard in the industry. And from there, you sort of get where the coordinates are in the space. But of course, natural cameras can distort images. So I had to actually undistort the images because these are just natural cameras. The next point was a key point detection algorithm that found distinctive features along the robot. And that was the QR codes that you see are the Aruco markers. Next, I use a feature matching algorithm. And what this does is it starts mapping the relevant points between the 3 images, which are from 3 different cameras. So it's sort of telling you this is the same object here, here, and here. Next was epipolar geometry. You match the key points along those Aruco markers along something called an epipolar line. So you start mapping the relationship between one item, but from 3 different angles. And then I use something called stereo rectification. This is another algorithm, and what that does is you'll see sort of here that it's creating a 3D image by sort of manipulating all 3 images and sort of aligning them along one plane, and that's creating virtually a 3D image. Next, I use Aruco marker detection so that it starts detecting these QR codes along the robot's backbone, so you can sort of know where these are in space, because now we have a 3D world. So if I know where these markers are in space, now I know, relatively speaking, where the robot is in relation to those markers. And finally, the big part is something called triangulation, and that gets the 3D coordinates of not only the robot backbone, but the entire ecosystem. So now you have like virtually a 3D map of everything in the space, and that's very important. So the results here, if I just move myself, is that you get the XYZ pixel coordinates of each Aruco marker along the robot's backbone. So effectively now you know where the robot is in space, in 3D space. And the accuracy of this system that I had made has a plus or minus 1 millimeter error. And of course, some limitations that contributed to that was really resolution quality. The cameras were not the best. The lighting could have been better, and some markers were misdetected. So in the future, you could use better cameras, evolved state-of-the-art computer vision algorithms, because there's always so much of them, and you could use better lighting as well. But overall, the system was very well made for what it is, and this could probably be used in a surgical context for the future. So thank you so much for listening to my project, and I look forward to your questions. Thanks so much. And shout out to my team at the Continuum Robotics Lab.